Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another playthrough of BrainScratch Commentaries. We're doing something a little bit different today where we're playing River City Girls. Well, playing WayForward games is pretty normal for us, but we have a special guest with us today. We have the director of the game, Adam Tierney, actually. Say hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good to have you with us. So, I guess we could start with how did this game come to be? Because it's very different to regular Kunio-kun games.
Sure. So I've been at WayForward for, gosh, almost 20 years. I think it's 18, 19 years so far. Started as an animator and then worked my way up as assistant director under Matt Bozon, and then eventually director a couple years later. And directed about a dozen or so titles there. But recently I've shifted more into the biz dev side. So for people that don't know what biz dev means, that's the person that's kind of like lining up the opportunities and kind of figuring out what games we go after, talking to the other parties. And part of that is we started visiting Japan maybe about 5 years ago. And that really opened up a lot of opportunities for us because typically we would just go through the US branches of, Konami or Capcom or what have you. But being able to go directly to the Japanese branches with Tokyo Game Show gave us a lot of new opportunities that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So for that, we met up with Arc System Works. We've always loved their work and the brands that they have, Guilty Gear and BlazBlue, but also the classic ones that they picked up like Double Dragon and Kunio-kun. And we just kind of came up with this idea of, hey, what if we do like the girl version of Kunio-kun, specifically kind of based off of one of their Super Nintendo games that they had, Kunio-tachi no Banka. And they really liked the idea. We pitched it to them. We kind of gave it its own spin visually and personality-wise, and shortly thereafter we signed up with them and started working on it. So at this point, this is the first game we're looking at that released in 2019. Since then, we've ported the game that it was based on and kind of added some flair to that as River City 0, and then just last month we released River City 2. So it's been a really interesting process of kind of making our own little corner of this brand, and they've been awesome to work with us, Arc System Works.
Yeah, I actually just bought River City Girls 0 like 3 days ago. I haven't finished it yet, but I played through like half of it. My save file is standing in front of a ladder. The password is 1234. It's I'm not sure how that works out, but it was a good place to stop. I took it as an omen, and I'm definitely enjoying the game that sort of spawned this one. Although I will make a really obvious observation. My God, these girls have upgraded their fighting skills from the days of Slap Fu, because that was their fighting style in that game. They just slapped the enemy over and over again.
Yeah, we took some of the inspiration, like we still have the curb stomp, which was very essential in that game when you get enemies on the ground, and a lot of the attacks we took are some from that game, some from classic Double Dragon, because the overlap between the River City and Kunio-kun games and Double Dragon and a few other older Technos Data East games, like they've always had kind of a shared universe. You see like a Bobo pop up in this game and other Kunio-kun games. But yeah, we when we delved into the combat, we wanted to make it very robust, but also very easy for people to master. So, that's always the goal with most action games, something that anybody can wrap their heads around enough, any level of skill gamer to enjoy, but then there's enough depth for the people that are, real masters at it. And yeah, I mean, my assistant director on this, who directed the second game, Bannon, did most of the combat design, and I really love what he and the animators were able to put together in terms of, the playability, the variety. There's so many different moves you can unlock in this game, and then also just maintaining kind of the humor and the style in those attacks so that it doesn't feel completely disconnected from the story and the VO and the characters and all that.
Yeah, that's one thing I like about the two characters, and this is something that I value personally in beat-em-ups and action games, is that a lot of their personality comes through in the way they fight. Like Kyoko here, yeah, she does the punches and the kicks, but she sometimes just flails into a completely cartoony kind of stance when she's attacking. Yep. And it's like she's kind of the impulsive, simple-minded one of the two, so that really fits her. Whereas I find Misako is a lot more vicious. And she's got the spiked knuckles, but she'll also just pull off her heart backpack and brain you with that. Sure, why not? She's got it on hand.
Of course. Yeah, their personality, and even just like looking at their faces, like when Kyoko is carrying something heavy, getting that kind of like cute little puff cheek, strained anime look. Like there's so much personality. Our lead animator on this was KU, and really just carved out his own kind of style that I think just again matched everything else that we were putting together artistically and story wise in the game so well.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy this kind of game. It's the sort of like mashup of RPG elements and beat 'em up elements. I think that this is a combination of genre elements that should probably be done more often because, like, I grew up with beat 'em ups. Like, and I don't just mean Streets of Rage. I mean the Death and Return of Superman, which was unfair as hell. I'm gonna say, but like. One of the things about classic beat 'em ups is that they were kind of quarter munchers, you know? They tended to have elements that were designed to kill you. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Absolutely.
Simpsons, TMNT arcade game. I have lost lots of quarters at the skating rinks and arcade games in those days. Oh yeah, by the way, new voice here. I'm Wolfman2000. Some call me Jason. I am playing as Kyoko.
Yeah, he is my player too to my Misako.
I probably should have given you a moment to introduce yourself at some point. I apologize for blathering on there.
No. Adam gets priority on this one. He knows the game.
And you're seeing on screen right now one of my favorite things to do in games, which is to have the mean girls, to have the rivals, and I just love that trope of just having, you know, the angry, catty, like, you know, snide characters that players just love to hate. And it kind of came out organically in this one where, you know, we were first looking at Kunio-tachi no Banka, where Masako and Kyoko are the girlfriends to Kunio and Riki. And then as you go into the game series in general, it's really long. It was something like 50 games over, you know, almost 40 years of releases consistently in Japan. And they are more frequently dating Hasabe and Mami. And so we said, oh, well, let's use that in the story of the game. Let's have them kind of this rivalry for the boys' hearts. And that's why we have them just appearing as just, you know, kind of a crappy little like snide characters throughout the game. And it's really fun to watch, you know, people play the game on Twitch because the reaction is so visceral. Everybody just hates them so immediately and consistently. And then so, you know, not too much of a spoiler, it's a 3-year-old game, but by the end you get to, if you do a certain set of kind of secret things, battle them, and people are so relieved that they finally get to punch these girls that have been teasing them for, you know, the entire experience.
Of course, the punchline to that whole joke is that because Misako and Kyoko were only the girlfriends of Kunio and Riki in one game, and Hasabe and Mame were usually their girlfriends in almost every game, the rivalry is kind of like just this huge meta joke.
Yeah.
Because Misako and Kyoko don't have as big a part in this series as they obviously wish they had. Well, they do now, but like they didn't when this game was made, and they kind of just sort of incidentally steamroller their way through the bad guys on a wild goose chase in this game. And
I always love that approach with heroes or characters where it's just like, you know, punch first, ask questions later, and that really, like, you know, took it to the nth degree here, where they get almost no info. As you saw in the intro scene, like they basically see their boyfriends what looks like getting tossed into a van, and then they just immediately just start punching their way across town. And, you know, even the clues that they get that take them from boss to boss are so minimal and just circumstantial. And so it's kind of like they'll beat up a boss, and then it's like, I don't know, maybe they went to this area of town, and they just go beat up everybody there. And that was always kind of the joke at the heart of it, is that at the end, they've basically taken down an entire Yakuza structure and destroyed, you know, thousands of characters and you know, props and stuff all over town, just in this wild pursuit that was kind of, you know, minimally informed, and depending on the ending you get, almost kind of misinformed.
Yeah, I mean, at one point I believe Kyoko even asked, you know, why does everyone beat each other up in River City? And Misako's just kind of like, I don't know, it's just what we do.
Why must students fight?
Yeah, exactly. Why are you
our current
asking?
situation is these girls are breaking out of detention, and the actual school faculty over the PA system is saying, "All right, kids, you know what to do," and all the other students are rising up to beat them up, and that's just it's a lot more comedic than Kunio-kun typically is, from what I know. But when you get down to it, go ahead.
It's a pretty funny series, but yeah, ours is very silly, I think, and I think that's just if you've played Shantae or Catgirl Without Salad or any of our original brands, they tend to be pretty absurdist and pretty silly. So we wanted to lean into our strengths there. And then, actually it was funny. A lot of that kind of came late. So some of the latest additions that we made to the game were the hosting in this first series of rooms, the school. So the principal came really late. The principal's VO, kind of adding extra little context to it, didn't come into the last few months of production. Same thing with some of the one-off moments, like the sex ed film that you saw in the background.
I was about to ask about that.
Yeah, that was kind of just internal playtesting, and even with the idea of, it's a brawler, some of the people that we had testing it were like, well, I'm confused why we're doing all this. And so, that sort of feedback from people that aren't on the team but are either in the company or friends of the company, it's so critical to get that and get a fresh perspective. And then that's some of the stuff we added pretty late in development was just add a little bit more context and personality to this first world.
Oh, so someone looked at like the straight-laced idea of the situation of fighting your way out of a school for no reason, asked why it was happening, and the jokes were added partially to explain that?
Yeah, we basically started with the cutscenes and the story intact. So, they got the photo on their phone and then they busted out of their classroom. So that was all there. But it was initially much drier in the first world. So it was essentially they got the phone call and then they just went and beat up everybody else on the way out. So adding the principal, adding the sex ed film, adding, the principal keeps coming back as they're making their way through the different rooms saying, oh, well, like right now, she'll stop them, we'll stop them here. Adding that extra little bit of context for people that didn't know the series or maybe weren't that familiar with how a typical brawler works, I think makes it a little more digestible.
I think in this case that was probably a really good idea, because just without context, beating your way through a legion of students out of a school it runs the danger of making the protagonists seem ill-willed, and I think adding this absurd sort of comedic dystopian layer to the top to make it more like that's just the way this world works, I think it softened it to the point where it doesn't harm the way the players are going to view the characters.
Right, exactly.
I mean, considering that the school has a whole lesson on puberty, and I mean the whole punching bricks thing, I'm guessing just hurting each other is part of the common rule here.
It reads like Misuzu ends up as the unintentional punchline of that post hoc joke, though. I'm not sure if that was something that anyone during development actually decided, or if it was just an accident of the way things lined up when that was added.
You know what? I have to admit, I never connected that. Well, because it was actually done backwards. She punched her way through the wall early in development. So that's actually something that's interesting, too. The stuff that takes the longest to develop are the full animation sequences. So the animation intro at the beginning, and then you saw her little boss intro here. Those take just ages and ages to put together. We worked with Studio Yada on the animation sequences in the first game. So that's the kind of stuff we were planning from 1 or 2 months into it. So yeah, that's just sort of a happy accident. But yeah, I guess she's pretty good at puberty.
Okay, well, I definitely read that one a little bit wrong, but
It's
I like
Kunio-kun.
it. I like how it came out because, you've got this joke in the middle of the level about puberty and punching through brick walls, and it's just this kind of chuckle duck making fun of the way people tend to view puberty in a very juvenile sense, and then at the end of the level the boss actually Kool-Aid mans her way through the wall. It does feel connected, but it's actually just accidental, and that kind of stuff I think is probably the most fun aspect of how a video game story can come out.
Yeah, and I think that stuff also it comes from kind of just having consistent sensibilities. So, in the very beginning, it's not too much of a spoiler because at the very beginning of the second game, one of the characters, the first things you see even before you play the game is somebody kind of punching their way out through a wall. So I think this is just a world where if people have to get somewhere in a hurry, they'll break their way through a wall. We've often kind of, in addition to looking at the previous Kunio-kun and Double Dragon games, which we were raised on, a big influence was just crazy over-the-top things like Scott Pilgrim or games like No More Heroes, where the characters are almost just kind of like superheroes and supervillains. They don't really talk about it that much, but they just have extraordinary abilities. I just love that kind of style in games.
It kind of reads like, hey, what would a world look like if everyone were Superman?
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a lot of seriousness that can come out of those settings, but there's also a lot of hilarity that can come out of those settings too. And I think that does come through here. Of course, the other running joke in this level is that Misuzu doesn't even go to this school. Neither does Kyoko, but she was in detention anyway.
And that was actually, it's funny, both of those were actually a happy accident as well. So we actually wrote it as they're all schoolmates. And then that was one of the things that Ark clarified for us. Again, there's so much lore and there's so much depth with this. And they said, no. Like, remember, Kyoko goes to a different school and Misuzu goes to a different school. So the lines that we those were like last minute replacements right before we recorded, where Kyoko says, I don't even go to this school. That line always gets such a laugh. And it was totally just a replacement because she was initially intended to be here. But now the idea that she just ditches her school to hang out at her friend's school is so absurdist, and people love that. And then the same thing with Misuzu, when we was clarified, no, she goes to one of the other high schools too. Then we came up with the whole thing of school defense force. It seemed like a very, very like 90s like Japanese game sort of thing that they would have this weird school defense force to beat up miscreant teenagers and stuff. So that all came from that.
It's also another happy accident, but I'm probably the only one who made this connection, is that Kyoko just showing up to hang out at someone else's school is also an old Sailor Moon joke. During season 5 of the anime, Sailor Mars would just show up to stalk the idols, the Sailor Stars, and she doesn't go to that school. She goes to a completely different school. She's like the only member of the Sailor Scouts who doesn't go to that school. But she would just keep turning up in the middle of the day anyway, much to the exasperation of everyone around her. So, it's kind of the same sort of funny thing going on here. And I was 90% positive going into this that nobody on the development team actually remembered enough about Sailor Moon to realize that they had done the same thing. So
we're big Sailor Moon fans, but that didn't come from there. However, one thing that's interesting is you mentioned Sailor Mars. All of the VO in this game is directed by the amazing Christina V, who we've worked with on most WayForward games. She does the casting, she does all the voice direction. She also plays Hasebe in this, and she is the current Sailor Mars in the current VO cast.
Oh.
It must be a dream come true for her.
Oh yeah, she was. I remember that when she was able to announce that, she was so happy because that was just like a childhood dream character of hers.
The Sailor Senshi series was popular for many people, and I can understand wanting to, just live out your dream and be one of the characters.
Yeah, and working with her, it really escalates all of our games. I mean, she'll do the VO and Shantae games and Catgirl and like everything that we do. VO is really, something we've leaned into more and more, especially passive VO, where it's playing as you're fighting through the game. I remember the first time I saw anything like that. Well, there's Portal, of course, but before that I had my mind blown by the first Shenmue game, where you're fighting with your rival about a whole bunch of street gang members, and then they're like giving quips back and forth, and all they're doing is just playing VO files. But it was so mind blowing to me that there would be chatter between characters as you're fighting, and so we put that all over this game, and it really is a great way to enhance the personality of the game without slowing the action down. As much as possible, we tried to not, pause the game other than cinematics, and all the cinematics are also skippable, but really do storytelling on the fly through VO and environmental storytelling so that it's happening while you're beating people up. I think that's always a better approach.
I think that's the approach that beat 'em ups and action games should really lean into, and it's like it's a big part of the genre, especially ever since Devil May Cry leaned into it for gameplay purposes. But projecting character personality and character motivation through the fighting style and animations that go on during gameplay really does bring the whole thing together. And like, it's probably my favorite part of this whole genre is seeing how that happens. And it's always the thing that makes me frown most when I play a budget action game and they don't even bother to try doing that. Because it's like, yeah, I already know that I'm gonna be disappointed by this game because they're just fighting. Anyone can just fight. Only this character can fight like this character does.
Well, there'll be plenty of more fighting in the upcoming parts, so...
Oh yes.